After 2 weeks of testimony, Special Operations Chief Edward Gallagher was found not guilty yesterday of murdering a suspected ISIS prisoner in Iraq. The decorated Navy SEAL had been accused of stabbing the wounded teenage captive back in 2017. William Brangham has the story.
That's right, Judy. In addition to being found innocent on the first-degree murder charge, Chief Gallagher was also found not guilty of attempted murder of Iraqi civilians and of obstruction of justice. The only thing he was convicted of was posing in a photo with the dead captive's body. For that, he was demoted one rank. He will serve no further jail time. Late last month, this trial took a dramatic turn when one of the prosecution's witnesses, Navy SEAL Corey Scott, testified that after he saw Gallagher stab the teenager, Scott killed the captive by plugging his breathing tube. Scott claimed it was an act of mercy. Gallagher always maintained his innocence, and on Fox News this morning, flanked by his wife and lawyer, he reiterated his view that it was a group of disgruntled fellow SEALs who wanted to frame him.
I just want to make clear that this this small group of SEALs that decided to concoct this story in no way, shape, or form represent the community that I've loved and gave my soul to.
For more on this case, I am joined by Steve Walsh. He's been following this story for KPBS Public Radio in San Diego, and he was there for the verdict and sentencing today. Steve Walsh, thank you very much for being here. You've been following this trial all along. Was your sense that this verdict was a surprise?
It was a surprise in the sense that yesterday, when the verdict came out and he was acquitted of 6 of the 7 charges, and all 6 were the most serious charges, there was a great deal of jubilation. Gallagher was hugging his wife. They were very celebratory. So there was a feeling to this today that maybe Gallagher would serve no jail time at all, at least wouldn't get a sentence of any jail time. But on this last charge, the least serious of the 7 charges, the jury decided to give him the maximum sentence, which is this 4 months in jail, and they reduced him in rank from a chief petty officer to a petty officer first class. That's going to have implications on Gallagher's retirement. In fact, we were expecting Gallagher to come out and talk to us after the sentencing, but instead he and his wife got in the car and they drove away.
Gallagher was originally accused by fellow SEAL members of his own platoon, which in and of itself is sort of odd given the sort of historically tight-knit nature of the SEAL organization. They said that he went up in a sniper tower and shot at civilians. Several of them said that they saw him stab this alleged captive ISIS prisoner. How did Gallagher's team rebut those witnesses?
Well, Gallagher's team said that essentially they portrayed this as an investigation that was out of control, that it targeted Gallagher from the very beginning. The lead investigator for naval investigations, Joe Warpinski, he had only been with NCIS for 2.5 years before he got this incredibly high-profile war crimes case. They also portrayed the SEALs in Gallagher's platoon. Gallagher is 40 years old now. The rest of his platoon was much younger. On the stand, his attorney called them entitled young SEALs.
So in addition to having those SEALs, who I guess their testimony was simply not believed by the jury, there was also this piece of evidence of texts that Gallagher had sent to a fellow SEAL. Apparently he sent a photograph of the captive's body, and I wanted to read what these texts say. One of them said, "I've got a cool story for you when I get back. I've got my knife skills on." Another text said, "Good story behind this. Got him with my hunting knife." How did the defense team rebut that bit of evidence?
Well, honestly, they didn't. I mean, if you think about this is something that happened in Iraq in 2017. They have no body in this case, very little forensic evidence, but the one thing that they did have were these photographs that Gallagher sent out to people in the United States and other members of the platoon with him posing with the knife up to the dead detainee. So in the end, that was what he was convicted of.
But I guess the evidence citing, if a Gallagher has a text that says, "I can't wait to tell you the story about this, I got him with my knife," how did Gallagher's team push that off, or did they just not address that?
Well, they addressed it in the sense of they said that this was dark humor. They also have other texts where he threatens to kill his platoon. He turned to the jury of all members of the military, Marines, and one SEAL, as a matter of fact, and said, "Who among us had not had their commander threaten to kill them at one point or another?"
And lastly, there was this piece of sort of a bombshell development where one of the prosecution's main witnesses, this medic who was there, says after he saw Gallagher stab the captive, it was he, the medic, who then killed the captive, not Gallagher. I mean, that's got to do something to your case if your key witness sort of says, actually, the guy you think killed it didn't do it, I did it.
Exactly. This was a prosecution witness, so on cross-examination, that's when the defense brought this up. It played into their overall narrative that this was a sloppy investigation. They didn't ask the right questions to the right people at the right time. Now, of course, there were some conflicting testimony. One other Marine raider who was there also said that he saw no stab wounds on the dead body.
Lastly, we know that Gallagher is convicted of this one charge of posing with the photograph. What is next for Chief Gallagher?
Well, the way it works in military court, this will go to the convening authority for final approval of this sentence. And then his attorneys seem pretty eager to appeal this decision. They don't want this sentence of confinement on his record if they can possibly avoid it. So we probably won't see the final outcome for a while. But in the meantime, he'd already served 8 months in the brig. That was basically good time. So he served none of this 4-month sentence. So he was able to drive off right after his case was over today.
All right, Steve Walsh of KPBS in San Diego. Thank you very much.
Thanks, William.